Most of the videos on this channel have been about lists of stocks that I think you should buy. That being said, there is obviously the opposite of this, which are stocks that I think should be avoided. Despite never making a video on this exact topic, I think knowing which stocks to not buy is just as important as knowing which stocks to buy. For this reason, I decided to make a video regarding this, and in this video, I'm going to go over 3 different types of stocks I think you should avoid, each for their own different reasons. So let us get right into it. Before we start this video, make sure to like and subscribe if you're new to the channel because I will be posting dividend stock videos just like this one every few days. The first type of stock on this list of stocks I think you should avoid are companies that get into political controversy often. Political controversy is very common these days with a multitude of different people, groups, and even companies getting into trouble because of it. However, politicizing your company is one of the worst things a company can do in general as it alienates a large portion of your consumer base. If a company has a political stance that does not align with consumers, those consumers may feel inclined to not buy from that company any longer. That is why I firmly believe that companies should stay out of political issues as much as possible, as these issues are sometimes so polarizing that they aren't worth talking about, as it will end up distancing some of your customers no matter what. Some examples of stocks like this have been Starbucks, Target, and Disney. All 3 of these stocks have gone into different political controversies, the most recent of which being Starbucks and their stance on the Israel-Palestine war. Unlike Disney and Target though, Starbucks was more so forced into this situation as they had to rebuke a stance made by their union, as that itself was also causing issues as many people confused tweets made by the union with the actual company. This is an unfortunate situation for Starbucks and has caused many people, especially of the younger generation who are some of Starbucks' biggest consumers, to boycott the company in retaliation. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Disney hasn't necessarily done a specific thing that has been politicized, but Disney in general has been criticized for becoming overly quote-unquote woke and leftist. Although a good amount of Disney consumers probably agree with these political views somewhat, it has still definitely alienated a good chunk of people all across the United States and has stopped them from buying Disney merchandise, watching Disney films, or going to Disney parks, which all hurt the bottom line. There are many reasons for Disney's over 50% drop since their all-time high, but it has to be said that this has absolutely been one of the contributing factors. The last stock I mentioned was Target, and they got into trouble after people found that at certain Target locations they were selling goods that were deemed inappropriate. This caused the company to receive major backlash, especially on social media, and as we all know, Target has been an absolutely abysmal stock ever since their all-time highs back in 2021. This, along with theft, can definitely be cited as 2 of the major reasons behind the stock decline. Either way, all 3 of these companies have got into political hot water in recent years and has been one of the reasons behind all 3 companies having a declining share price in recent history. In my opinion, it just doesn't make sense for companies to try and involve themselves in such complex political drama when their ultimate goal should just be about being a solid business, and that is why this is the first type of stock that I think should be avoided. The second type of stock on this list are companies that are a part of dying industries. This may sound obvious at first, but a company clearly cannot stay successful if the industry it is a part of continues to falter around it. One industry that I think is notable in this category is the tobacco industry, especially regarding Altria, ticker MO, as that is a stock that is only based within the United States. This high-yielding dividend stock that yields just around 10% has been extremely popular amongst dividend investors for a long time. Their cash-rich brands such as Marlboro have allowed the cigarette maker to have a lucrative dividend while also staying afloat. This, however, is changing over time. As I mentioned earlier, Altria only owns the rights to cigarette brands within the United States. This may not sound like a huge issue, but cigarette sales in general have been plummeting much quicker in the United States than they have in the rest of the world for quite some time. Altria has combated the drop in sales by hiking prices on their premium products, which has worked as smoking addicts have been willing to pay the price in the past. These addicted smokers have been willing to pay the premium so much so that the stock is listed as a consumer staple instead of a consumer discretionary. However, this is not only an unsustainable business practice, but also based on their last quarter reports, it can be inferred that people are switching to more affordable brands because of the sharp price hikes. This clearly shows that Altria simply cannot afford to keep hiking prices and instead needs to get more customers, which is nearly impossible as smoking is as unpopular as it has ever been in the US. Altria and other cigarette makers have tried to branch out into alternative forms of tobacco use such as chewing and vaping, but these attempts have so far been largely fruitless as most people who don't smoke also don't want to use tobacco products at all. Dying industries can definitely be hard to spot, such as the sharp decrease in sales of the physical camera from companies such as Kodak with the introduction of the smartphone. However, when a dying industry such as the smoking industry is this clear to see, I am still left wondering why people would invest. If you are an older investor who still needs the income, Altria still probably makes a good amount of sense, however. The high yield should should be sustainable for the next few years. That being said, with the popularity of tobacco continuing to wane, I just don't think Altria will be such a lucrative company going a few decades in the future. The stock price and dividend isn't going to be sustainable forever, and for that reason, this is the second type of stock I think investors should avoid. The last type of stock I think should be avoided is kind of similar to the last one, and it is buying stocks for the dividend yield without looking too far into the company fundamentals. This is something I have been guilty of in the past myself. In the past, I have been in a situation where I've seen a company that has a pretty sizable yield and have bought into it without really thinking about the underlying company. In hindsight, this is a ridiculous thing to do. The dividend doesn't make the stock makes the dividend. In fact, a lot of the time, a stock has a very high yield because the company fundamentals are bad and the stock prices drop so much so quickly, pushing the yield higher inversely. This would probably end up resulting in a dividend cut sooner or later, which is one of the worst things investors could see. These stocks that keep dropping but look attractive due to the yield being pumped higher and higher are known as dividend traps. This is because a person may think that the stock yield looks good, then they will buy shares, the stock will continue to drop from there, and even if the person DCAs, the stock won't return back to where it started and eventually the dividend will be cut, leaving the shareholder in a lose-lose situation. Some examples of dividend traps in the past have been companies such as Tupperware Brands, Barnes & Nobles, and Goodyear Tires. All three of these stocks at one point paid a ridiculously high dividend yield, however they were all quickly either delisted from the stock market or had their dividends cut completely. The one dividend trap I've fallen for in the past but was lucky to get out of so quickly was the Walgreens Boots Alliance Company, ticker WBA, which just recently sliced their dividend after so many years of decreasing stock price and profits. Basically, a company needs to be doing well for the dividend to be sustainable. A company cannot just have their dividends magically appear. The fundamentals have to be strong to allow a dividend to even exist. This is why buying companies with strong fundamentals, even if the starting yield is low, is going to be the better option basically 100% of the time. You shouldn't just buy a stock because it looks good on the outside. You need to understand what is truly going on to determine whether it is a buy or not. Dividend traps can be easy to get stuck into, as even huge companies such as AT&T have succumbed to the title in the past. That being said, if you see a stock with a huge dividend, just make sure you understand why that is the case before buying in. But that does not necessarily mean that every stock with a big dividend is a bad one. Do you agree with some of the stock categories I put on this list, or do you disagree? Let me know down below. Thank you guys for the continued support as always, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.